vision, goal setting, determination, sharp focus, respect, and discipline. Once you learn it, you can apply it to all aspects of your life. The warrior's mindset prepares you for the largest competition ever, the competition against self. It shows you how to solve all problems at hand, maintain focus and a peaceful state of mind. We live in a competitive society. We live in a society that right now is fighting back and recovering from COVID-19 and all of the other devastating things that has impacted all of our lives. But we will never quit. Quitting is not an option. So thank you for joining in to this Warriors Mindset broadcast so we can always find a solution on how to step up, flip the script, and be a success in our life, regardless of the obstacles that stand in front of us.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Willie Bam Johnson's Warriors Mindset. Once again, Warriors Mindset about digging down deep and flipping the script. I don't care what we're facing. If we dig down inside and we do our very best to tap into our chi and our belief and allow our faith to take us to new heights, we can flip the script and do whatever God created us to be able to do. And that's what this show is all about. It's about a hope, opportunity, and being able to prepare the world for the next generation so they can have better opportunities than what we have had. We have a very special guest here. It's an honor. Credit goes back to Mr. Warren Hutland. But the first thing I want to say, I just happened to be sitting at home one day, flicking through Netflix, and I came across this thing called Crack. It was a movie, a documentary. And because I came up in that era, I was like, man, I wonder what this documentary is about. Man, when I began to watch that documentary, was I so focused on every element, the storytelling, the references, the factual information, history that sometimes have went so unnoticed. And sometimes when people look at people like me who have struggled to overcome those sort of obstacles, they think by choice, we just wanted to go out and become drug dealers or become criminals. They don't realize the circumstances. But we seen these circumstances in this documentary. Mr. Keith, can you give the audience, first of all, an introduction on yourself, sir?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And Warrington, just speaks really highly and just said, you had to do this, and everything you're doing and achieving is just is amazing. I work for Firelight Films, and Firelight Films is a documentary film company that's Black owned and operated by award-winning director Stanley Nelson and his wife, Marcia Smith. They started about 20 years ago. And it's the only, documentary film company that, really focuses on Black stories by Black people, which is something that's rare in the whole documentary field. And I'm head of content, and they pulled me in to produce the Crack, documentary that, as you know, appeared on Netflix. And I remember being here in New York City, living in Harlem during that time, and family members, getting caught up in it, during that time, and seeing what happened, to my family members during that time. And so to be able to really go back and really understand this and dissect it, because it was emotional. Like for me, it was emotional. Because you see what it's doing to your family members, and it angers you, and it just eats at you. But to really understand how the government played into this, how the economy and economics played into this, how policy played into this, and then the disparity in how people who needed help, people who were addicted, needed help, were criminalized. And for me, that was probably the biggest travesty, of all this, of how people who, had an addiction, who needed help, and we know that now, we see it. It's treated, opioid addiction is treated as an illness. People are given help, whereas people during that era were criminalized. And when you're in the thick of it, and you're kind of terrorized by, those dealers, you're like, hey, get them out, but without, I said, we don't want to get them out that way. We want to restore them to who they were and who they know. And so any of us who know People who were addicted, we know, what they were like as children. We know that they were sensitive, and and couldn't really handle, things that were going on around them, and turned to, drugs or alcohol, whatever, to mask, the things that would never process, the trauma that was never processed. So for me, that was the biggest travesty in that, and then making the connections, making the connections between what was happening in Washington that played out on the streets of, urban communities across, Black and brown communities across the country.
What's so powerful, what I told Mr. Warren when we were talking about setting up this interview, I said, sir, I always talk about my story, but imagine that story and me being a martial artist fighting through that. He's like, whoa, if it was not for martial arts,
right,
I don't know where I would be. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people recognize, that at one time in our communities, without the Black community, there would be no Bruce Lee. Yeah, and everybody got to remember that. It was by way of the inner city that martial arts found a home. At the same time, hip hop was coming up, martial arts was coming up. And for some people who were seeing such tragedy that your documentary talked about, for a kid like me, all we had was a creative escape through music, martial arts, or whatever. That's why it was so powerful, especially to take that the song, it's like a jungle sometime, and make me wonder why I keep going under. During your time, the impact of what that one song probably had on you, if you could think back, what was that impact like for you?
Wow, wow, that's a good question. That's a good question. It's interesting. I have to be honest. I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
In a small town in New Jersey, and so hearing that song was kind of like foreshadowing what happened in where I grew up. So it was like a jungle sometimes, helped me wonder why I keep from going under. It was like, wow, man, this was like the first time. This is the first time you heard an experience, in art, really. That was, being communicated everywhere. So it was telling a story about what was happening, and how people were feeling, and how people were coping.
Yes. Yes.
So by the time, we really understood it, like the same thing happened in New York, in Harlem, the Bronx, all over. It happened in my little town in New Jersey, just maybe a little bit later, but the same kind of things happened to my friends. So it was almost like a premonition in a lot of ways, because then I saw my friends going under. All of it, everybody, all the guys I grew up with, came, to those, pressures. I was one of the lucky ones. I was one of the fortunate ones. That guy like you, we found other ways, to channel all of that, but my boys, they, a lot of them just couldn't handle it, and they couldn't keep from going under. They went under.
It's funny because when I think of that song, and I'm thinking of once again your documentary, and a lot of my stories when I tell people about, I remember one in the recent interview I just did. I was telling a guy, he had asked me, said, "So Willie, what was the time that your life turned around?" Because I suffered those consequences, and martial arts allowed me to come up through them. Like I didn't dealt with negative.
Right.
I remember one time winning the United States Martial Arts Championship, and when I came home to celebrate, the whole community was now infested with what your documentary was talking about, drugs.
Right. Yeah.
At one time, we can keep the doors unlocked. We can go to our next door neighbor and get sugar and fight it out, and then become the best of friends. I mean,
that's right.
So I remember practicing, and I remember listening to that song. And I felt like that's what I wanted to do. It was like, man, what's keeping me going? What is it that, why don't I just like give up? Because when you look outside and you look at your parents, you just see everybody quitting. And the tragic thing, and I ask you, I mean, what was that like just to see when so many moms and dads are trying to do their very best to put food on the table, but yet they sitting around and they see that this is like a lost cause. As hard as I work to get up, the system has been designed to keep me down.
Right.
I mean, What
But
was
it was by design. It was really by, design. Those of us who grew up, you struggling. My parents, they worked hard. They worked hard, and they struggled. I had a dad who busted his, he busted his butt every single day, had 5, 6 jobs, whatever he needed to do. And there's a correlation to that. I think, when people got into it, and you hear the stories in crack, when, some of the young guys, they were kids. I mean, they were, really young when they started dealing. That was a way for them to support their families.
right.
The economic policies of that time, during the Reagan era, and if everyone remembers, it trickled down economics. Nothing trickled down, and everything was pulled out from under them. So all the safety nets that were in place for people who, the people confronted your struggle, and then there was a safety net to catch them, that was pulled out. So in a lot of them, nothing was left. And so here comes this opportunity, this underground economy that, oh shoot, I can sell this, and I can make money, and I can make more money. One of the guys, Samson Stiles, who's in the documentary, is one of the dealers, who is a very accomplished journalist and filmmaker now. I mean, he's one of those stories. Like, he was a drug dealer. He did time. He was caught up deep. And we worked together at BET. He worked for me at BET as a correspondent. Nelson George, met him and just saw all his potential and brought him. And then we nurtured him, and he had the drive. He had everything. And you see that he had absolutely everything to be successful, in the media industry, everything. And, but when he was young, he didn't see that. And he didn't see that in himself. He didn't know the way. So he got caught up in that as a means. He was working at McDonald's, making $3.35 an hour. His girlfriend was, was pregnant. He needed a means to support his child. So he's working, through $3.35 at McDonald's, and so hey, you can sell this, and you can make $200-$300 in a day. He said, really? Wow. But so he did that to take care of his family. He did not do that to destroy the community. And then things escalate from there. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you are. And I think that when you talk about how it trickled down, because I see how things are something that comes to my mind. I remember at times, because I was a kid who went to the community centers for the free lunches.
Right.
We could go to the community center. You could do basketball, baseball,
right.
art and craft.
That's right.
You can create your martial arts. You can make you can do all the things that allowed us as kids to be kids.
That's right.
The community centers were our saving grace.
That's right.
So when I think of that documentary, what it reminded me of, like, people forgot that when they took away them community centers, they put us back on the corner.
They put us back on the corner.
I mean, and I don't think people recognize that when you take away that creative level of expression for us as kids.
That's right.
And you just give us idle time, you sitting around, well, man, what do we do? You took something from us.
That's right.
So dear. We had mentors and coaches who was there just to talk to us, to listen to us, to give us hope, to feed us opportunity. It was the fellowship of the hood.
That's right.
How impacting was that alone to take away from children?
Children, that's right. You think about it, and it happened across the board. People kind of point to single, parent households, but it was across the board. But when you have parents who what they're doing is responsible, they're going out working, and then they don't have the income coming in to provide childcare. And those community centers you were talking about provided a structured environment, a productive, structured environment. So when folks were out doing what they needed to do to support their families, there was something positive, for the kids, to place to be protected, to be nurtured, to be creative, all that. And it was just the Reagan era stripped our communities of that, and people were just left. So that's, I think the one thing that in this documentary that we tried to show, and it was how everybody was complicit in this. Everybody had blood on their hands. Everybody had blood on their hands. The police. I think one important part of the documentary is the police corruption. I mean, at first they just turned their heads to it. They didn't care what was happening in these neighborhoods, so they would just turn their heads. And then when they started seeing all this money being made, it's like, wait a minute, I can make some easy money off of this, and they were complicit too. And there were commissions, and so this wasn't anything. What was really important was anything that we said and did, and then we wanted to make sure, that it was fact and it was verified. So there was a lot of commissions and trials, that police were on for the corruption, and we used actual archival footage. So there was no narration in the film, so it wasn't us saying that, but we were showing that. Here it is. This is it. Here's the commission. You're hearing from the police mouths about what they did, during that time, shaking down drug dealers, and then taking, their money and the guns and selling it themselves, or, getting paid to, protect, the dealers, where they, there's one, dealer that we interviewed, young guy who eventually actually became a cop, but he talked about how he got stopped by the cops and he had, all this crack on him, and the police get back, hey, tell your boss I did you a favor, and gave it back to him, and no consequence. He later found out that, he was paying them off. So across the board.
And that's why that documentary meant so much to me once again, because these are things that I experienced in the city of Baltimore. And you try to explain it to people when I talk and I teach, and I say, guys, you don't realize it. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm seeing my mom on welfare, and I see the guy that she done brought the furniture from that probably only cost $200, but he's charging a upsell of $1,000.
That's right.
So every time he comes knocking on the door with a big, strong African-American male to intimidate her,
wow.
And you can see everything in her house go chaotic. Now she's yelling, she's cussing, she's in fear of losing the sofa that she's trying to provide for her family. And I said, people just will never understand what we as children had to go through. And for you to show that's the beginning to me of us telling stories that people need to know that, look, we didn't want to be this. We didn't want to be no drug dealers. We didn't want to be no what you call us gangsters. We didn't want to be no, you said, I think it was Master Warren, he said, these artists that are out there talking about, they didn't design hip hop to talk about and glorify gangsterism. Right. I mean, how important is it that the narrative of our entertainment telling the stories that empower our youth?
That's right. That's right. And, and a lot of those stories, there's always there's the debate, that's always raging, hip hop was accused, of bringing, all of this to the neighborhoods, that they're the reason, the blame for it, versus them reflecting and portraying what was happening. Hey, we're telling you guys, we're telling you what's going on. We're telling you, this is what's happening. You all are ignoring it. Mainstream media is ignoring. We're telling you what's going on. Now, and no one paid attention and didn't do anything about it. Had they listened, they could have put things in place to curb it. And here's the thing, what you just talking, what triggered when you talked about what happened with your mom and getting shaken down. I think that was probably one of the greatest travesties in this, is that, people became afraid of their kids, during that time. The drug dealers took over the neighborhoods and business drove it. And then guns became a part of the business, and violence became a part of the business. Silencing people became part of the business. And the victims of that were people who were living in those neighborhoods. And then came the outcries like, no, we don't want to live like this. They're terrorizing us. They're terrorizing us in our own neighborhoods. We can't even go outside. And then the response to that, from religious leaders to people in the community is like, no, we got to get rid of them. We got to get rid of this element. But what they didn't want was the outcome of it. They wanted it done, but it led to mass incarceration of Black men in our community, and women on both sides, the drug deals and the drug users. And I think a lot like we interviewed Charlie Rangel, And he admits, he apologized, I look back, it was the wrong thing to do.
Yes.
Now in hindsight, but when it was going on, people wanted the problem to stop. So it was an outcry from our community to stop it. Politicians jumped on that, and they came with this really draconian, crazy thing that just put people away. And it just escalated. And that just escalated from administration, from Reagan laid the foundation, Bush escalated it, and then Clinton sealed the deal.
And those things, that element right there alone just hit me. It just like woke me up. It's like, man, sometimes when we're not educated, we think that, and I'm not saying anything about politicians or no one, but I think a lot of times when you're not educated, you think that, oh, this person got your best interests at heart. But when you really look at them facts, you realize the one person that we thought had our best interests at heart, he sealed the deal at a level that made it even worse.
That's right.
And that was so powerful. And it's funny how some people, you don't want the truth because it's so devastating. It's like, whoa, I'm thinking this man was looking out for us, but yet he just sealed the deal and just sent us all the way to jail. It's like, it's devastating. I mean, how do you even recover? And and hopefully, I hope that we can continue to communicate and talk after this, because what I think about, I remember our projects changed in the city of Baltimore. Now they started making it every projects looked like a jail. But now in order to get into your house, you had to have ID. Wow. If you didn't have ID, they locked you up.
Wow.
And I remember one time trying to get my life together, running my martial arts school. I come home and I didn't have my ID, and they like, well, you can't go in. So, you can't go in your house. Who does that? How you cannot go in your house?
That's right.
So it escalated into an argument, and then what happened? The police comes out and they locked me up.
That's right. And that's a really important point, because say if all that was good to get drug dealers, off the street, this aggressive policing happened, because of it. But the biggest travesty in it, they couldn't distinguish who were the dealers and who were the good guys. We all to them were the same. So we got caught up in that, and we became victims of that kind of aggressive police tactics, just like we were treated like a drug dealer. When we never, we were living, doing all our stuff right, trying to get our lives right and do the right thing, but then they're treating us like we're criminals, because they can't distinguish, between, okay, this person is the one terrorizing the community. This one, oh, he is too, because how he looks and how he dressed. Hip and the style, during that time. It all blended. So the style that came out of that era, young people adopted it. And so they couldn't tell, who was who, because they were just looking at the style. They didn't look in your eyes.
But isn't that pretty contradicting that you take? And because I come from that life, and I teach martial arts, and I try to educate the kids today, always say, isn't it interesting that a hoodie over top of your head this meant stick up man?
That's right.
And now all of a sudden, corporate America then made those fashionable.
That's right.
For a whole nother group of people.
Always happens. Yeah.
I mean, what do you say to a kid that you look around and everything contradicts what you were taught to believe?
I know.
So it's like, you forget it, man. I'm just going like, F the world. What do you say to a kid that feels that way and they see this every day?
I know. And they're taught that, it's like, there's, how parents react to that. They, they won't let you wear a hoodie. They won't let you, wear jeans. You won't let them, fall off your butt. Where that's become mainstream style. But you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do certain things if you want to not have a life like that. I'll tell you, there was a point in my life, I just resented it. I resented the fact that I had, for me to be respected and credible, I had to dress a certain way. I couldn't dress the way I want to. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. However, I think the real complication in this is we all want our kids to come home alive.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So do you tell, okay, you're gonna wear this little, preppy shirt, and you're gonna wear these little khaki pants, and you're trying to dress like they used to dress. They're dressing like we dressed,
Yes.
but we can't, because that means that our lives are in jeopardy. So I think as parents, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I want her to be who she is and not worry about what someone thinks about her because of what she wears or what she does, even as a woman, as a girl. I want her to wear what she wants to wear, and that doesn't mean that you deserve to be sexualized, for what you wear. You should wear exactly what you want to wear, and that does not mean that you want to encourage certain behavior. However, you also don't want her to go out, dressed a certain way, because that men are going to react to her in a certain way. So it's a catch-22, and I don't know what I mean. You teach. It's the mind. I think what you're doing. Yeah. And that's really what it comes down. It's the mind.
But I think it goes back. That's why your documentary and education is so important. The more we tell our story, I think the most valuable thing we have is our truth. When we tell our truth in a manner to empower people, like what you did with that documentary, I believe we might not get everybody, but if you can plant that seed in that one child,
right.
That one child, like that's how it was back in when you came up. They said we probably can't get all of them, but if I can get this one, then this one can get another one, then this one can get another one, then we can begin to make an impact. And it's funny because I have this concept where I call it the 1 out of 100. They say 1% of the 1% of the people control the wealth.
Right.
Well, 1% of the people can make it out of that 100. So that person, that 1% of kids that can make it, they got to have the determination and strength, just like person that controls that 1% of wealth. They might not have the physical wealth right now, but they got an internal jewel of commitment and principles that if they can get the right support, they can do some tremendous things.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that concept, and how does that relate to what you're talking about?
That's the end game. That's what we have to do. We have to make that belief. And I think that is part of it. Somewhere, somebody planted that seed in your mind. I'm like you. Why was I the one who was able to get out of my circumstance? I know I wasn't the smartest. I know that I was not the smartest.
Yes.
There were dudes who, I would like, come on, let me see your paper.
Yeah.
Who ended up, on crack and who ended up dead. And I know I was never smarter than him, and he never got out. So what was that planted in my mind? Or who planted something in my mind to believe. So if it's not coming from your parents, I was fortunate to have it come from my parents. They always told me, or I always heard it from the time I was little. I mean, constantly. So for me, whatever they did and said to me clicked that, I would be successful in life. Whatever the quote unquote success is. So if it doesn't come from your parents, where can it come from? Those community centers you talked about.
Right.
Your martial arts, is what you're talking about. And it's drilling. You got to drill this in kids to make them believe it, because the other side, the other influences are pulling. They're pulling. So that influence has to be stronger.
And what's interesting, when I talked about the martial arts and how it, by way of the inner city, how it started through. You remember the movie theaters? You can go and line up, and you see a line all the way down 2 blocks to go in and see a black exploitation or a martial art film. It was, and you go into the movie theater, and it was so jam packed. And when Bruce Lee make a move, the whole crowd go, "Whoa!" It just was crazy.
Yeah.
But I think what happened when it became a profitable, money-making endeavor, they took it from our community.
Right.
What happens, I run a school in a suburban community today, and I still go back to my city.
Yeah.
Now something that was started just like hip hop in a struggle, it's now taken away from the place that it was created in.
That's right.
And now the kids are struggling and have nothing to grab a hold to.
Right.
But we understand that for us, when I realize the benefits, it instills confidence, discipline, commitment, goal setting. Those are the things that our kids need.
That's what you need.
So I mean, how do we, when we sit there and we see just this dark like abyss in our communities, what do we do? I mean, what do you think we can do as a fellowship to try to bring light?
Man, that's $1 million question, brother. Um, you know, I mean, it takes, the commitment of us. And I mean, are we doing our job? I think, you obviously are, I hopefully, through filmmaking, someone will see this and see, get the impact, something, it'll spark something.
Yes.
There's a spark. First, there has to be a spark. And then there has to be, constantly fueling that spark to make it grow.
Right, right.
So, they're the people who kind of like create the spark. Then we need, I think we need more people who are constantly, fueling it, and unfortunately, a lot of people get pulled out of, the places where it's needed most. So I don't, it's a really, tough question to answer. I think we knew the answer, I think we do know the answer. But I think now you got to, build the kind of coalition, around you, all the soldiers,
Right,
to be able to carry it out. And I don't think we have enough of that. We don't have enough teachers, who really care about the kids. I mean, who fundamentally, care about the development of the kids from a personal perspective. Yeah, because you got to teach them academically, but then for our kids who are living in these communities, they need that. Someone needs to motivate them. Someone needs to inspire them. Someone needs to tell them, you are brilliant.
yeah.
You are a star. And then that's what will then later. So if you never hear that in your life, so you can have all the best teachers in the world who would, give you all the book knowledge, but if no one tells you that you're a star and that you have everything it takes to achieve, then it's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's a spiritual answer to that question, and then there's a really, practical answer to that question, but they have to come together.
And and then once again, I believe God makes everything happen for a reason. From that documentary, when I think about me giving up at one point in my life and going and becoming victim to that drug, and being one of those people that was down on that ground, feeling for everything that that drug do to a person. When I got in trouble and I ended up getting locked up, and I dropped down on my hands and knees and I begged to God before I decided not to. I made it. At first, I was just ready to hang myself and end it all. And something said, "You're better than this. You've been doing."
But where'd that come from? I mean, where'd it come from? Like, what was that? Had to be inside you already, right?
Because I've been doing martial arts since I was 6 years old.
So it was martial arts that instilled. They planted that seed, that knowledge in your head.
Right. It was martial arts, but also my dad and my mom. Even though we were poor, my dad still say the jail is no place for a black man.
Right.
My dad said, when you go down here to this place called Jewtown, say thank you, sir, and say thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
The community instilled things that we no longer instilled in our community because they broke down and destroyed our community.
Right.
What your documentary talked about. I mean, we hung out, we had good times. You didn't disrespect no older adult.
Mm-hmm.
That came from the household. That came from my, I often say, even though I came up poor and my dad wasn't the best there, but he did the best that
he could. Absolutely.
So stop criticizing him for the downfalls, because everybody got downfalls.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It's a saying in the martial arts. It says, and plus I was fortunate enough. I taught because of the impact of entertainment. That's why your documentary and projects like that is so important. I taught myself martial arts. I wanted it so bad. I taught it to myself.
Wow.
And I did everything from calling China and calling Hong Kong and figuring out how to write sponsorship letters that led me to becoming a world champion and going to China.
Wow. Yeah.
From the hood.
Yeah.
So when, even after all of that, still the pull of the street, that is like that catch-22. The outside world see my talent, but back in the womb, it was devastating. They didn't understand what we was going through. They didn't realize that when you walk through the playground, a shootout happens, but no police is coming.
Right.
You all what you talked about. And so it's like when that moment happened and I got incarcerated, I knew better. It's like they're saying when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. I decided and I asked God to give me another chance. After that, over 34 years, I never went back. It was like, no, I know better. And I think that's that foundation that we talk about is so important for us to implant those seeds in our children at a young age.
Yeah.
And they might go off the path. But
Right.
when they can be
That's right.
reminded with knowledge and education like what you're doing, that's why, I mean, I'm not just making this up. That story, just like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I want a kid to know. Look, let me tell you, man, you can be hard. You can do whatever you want to do, but the consequences of jails, institutions, and death. What
That's
you
right.
want? You want that? Because I don't think
Right.
you want that.
That's right. That's a huge cost. That's the thing. When you really kind of take a look at, okay, yeah, it's, everybody talk about easy money. That was no easy money.
Yes, that's right.
Because the consequences of that were devastating.
Right.
So yeah, you took a risk every day. You
Right.
risked your life, and it wasn't just some like calculate. This was a risk, a real risk.
That's
Every
right.
day that you're out there, dying,
Right.
being arrested, ended up in jail, or have a life conviction, for the rest of your life. So you sacrificed your freedom. That's not easy money.
That's right.
If you understand here all the consequences. Okay, am I going to take this risk? Okay, if you understand, but the problem was none of the young people knew. They didn't understand the consequences, of it. Just didn't know. I mean, anybody, come on. Okay, yeah, you can do this. You can make $200, versus $100 a day, but you could end up dead, or you could end up in prison for the rest of your life. What are you going to do?
And I think that's the beauty in even this interview and connecting to people like you, because through everything that I touch and every kid I teach, and what I don't think what everybody realize, a lot of times when I talk to people, they say, yeah, we want to help the underprivileged community. I'm like, why do you have to even give us that label?
Right. It's
Why
not.
do we have to
Kids
be
are underprivileged. Kids are not. Right.
I mean, how is your feeling about it? Just always irked me when people when I talk about helping, they think I'm talking about what is underprivileged. Why would you even use that? What are you exemplifying? Just like the Black kids? Is that what you're saying? I mean, how do you feel
I had the same thing, man. I went to a camp, when I was a kid. I was probably in like 8th grade. And it was a camp for underprivileged kids. So everybody there, we all, and then all the counselors were white. And then they would talk about it. I said, underprivileged? I'm not underprivileged. What do you mean underprivileged? I never accepted that. And I never accepted it. But you're right. Kids aren't underprivileged. They may come from circumstances, that aren't as affluent as someone else, but I'm not underprivileged.
Right. That's right.
So again, that's all the stuff we have to fight against. We got to fight against the stigma, the labels, how people look at it. I mean, it's complicated. One time someone told me that, as a Black, I think we all hear it, that you have to work twice as hard to get the same thing that, white people get. And, at one point I questioned that. It's like, I've worked for a white guy, and this guy worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I couldn't keep up with him. So I'm like, okay, I don't work hard on him. This dude works hard. Yeah. And I said this to, it was a mentor. I said, but I don't work as hard as him. And he said, no, Keith, you do. Because he's allowed to work with freedom. You're working, and you have to think about every step you make. How are you viewed as a Black man? People thinking that you're not qualified, people thinking that you're there just because of affirmative action. You have to, when you walk into a meeting, people see you as a Black man. It's like, okay, well, how did he get here? Why is he here? Who is he? So I have to know that that's what I'm walking into. And then you have to diffuse the situation. It's this constant pressure. I know, when I talk to my white friends, and like anytime I'm driving, if I see a cop car, I react automatically. Button up, I have this, me and my brother were driving, we saw a car, it's like, uh-oh, wait a minute, are they gonna follow us? White people don't have that same, they don't have that. They drive to a cop car, oh, wow, and they keep driving. But we have this kind of, visceral reaction inside of us, which impacts everything that we do and everything that we have to be. So so we're doing double time for everything that we do because of being Black and being a Black man in this, in this context.
And it's funny that when I think of that, like even now, as much as I done had encounters with police officers and those situations in my community, I have two young boys. I mean, I got 5 kids total, but I got a 7-year-old and I have a 14-year-old, and they both work at the martial arts school. But nobody knows that I have to leave the school before 9 o'clock because I don't want the police to pull me over and my boys see something.
Right.
And it's kind of hard, as much as you try to like accept it. Nah, I ain't trying to, but still in the back of your mind, when you pull power police, when you see something, it ain't even about me no more. It's about them.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like you can't even explain it to people. I remember, and once again, I'm not trying to create no controversy or anything, but I remember when this whole thing happened, where this whole uprising was happening during the COVID. I had white friends saying, "Well, what is it? What's going on? I don't understand. What is it like about being Black? I was like, what the hell are you asking me that question for? That's an insult. Why would you even ask me that?"
Right.
I mean, what is that? I mean, what do you say to people that still like, why am I made to feel like this? Why am I made to, when I walk in the store, why is everybody looking at me like,
yes,
I'm
right.
a father, I'm a husband, I'm a community leader, and I still get judged like I'm up to something?
Yeah. And as a parent, you don't want to transfer how you feel and that experience to your children.
Yes, sir.
You don't want to, but you have to. I mean, yes, as a responsible parent, you have to make them aware of what could happen to you, if you are pulled over. You have to make them aware of what may happen if you go into a store. You want them to go in there freely. I mean, they can go in the store and can buy whatever they want.
Yes.
They have that ability, but they still are perceived a certain way. So you don't want them to carry that burden. I think I call it a burden, because you're constantly stressed about stuff.
Yeah.
Every time I walk out my apartment to get a cab, I know this is cliche, but every time I do, I am stressed.
Yeah.
Is this guy going to stop for me? And if he doesn't, I'm going to be pissed. Even going to the movies, there's certain movies I'll go and see, and there's certain movies I won't, because I'll go in that movie and I know I'll be pissed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's this constant kind of stress. So you don't want your kids to live with what I feel that I live with. I was born probably, I think I'm older than you. I don't know. I think so. I was born in 60.
I'm 57. How old are you?
Okay, we're the same generation. I'm 60.
Okay.
You look a lot younger than me.
Yeah, I was born 1964.
Okay, good. So you understand. So we can,
Yes,
So you don't want, I didn't want to raise my daughter with the same sensibility as someone who's raised in the 60s. We were aware. I mean, I knew my parents from the beginning taught me, let me know, but at the same time, they taught me to always hold my head high and don't let anybody else define me.
Yes. And
that's you have to, you know what? My parents, one thing they instilled in me was, if anyone, treats you a certain way because of your color, that's their problem. It's not your problem. Whatever it is, that's their problem. Always, who you are, and you walk through life knowing who you are, and it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of you in the context of your own self-esteem. You have to know what you're getting into and how to protect yourself. If you confront these ignorant people, all the time, in Jersey, we used to get run off the road, by white dudes in pickup trucks with flags. I will go into a neighborhood. I'm sorry, I'm going off track a little bit.
No, you good. Go ahead.
But you're bringing up all this stuff. But I don't know about you. I mean, anytime, if I go into a neighborhood or something, driving, if I go to a neighborhood and see flags all around, it's like, let me get out of here. And the American flag, seeing the American flag makes me nervous. And it should be the opposite, but it does, because I got chased, driving, I got pulled, chased by white dudes in pickup trucks with flags in the back of their pickup truck. So when I see a flag, that's what it clicks back to. That's a symbol of white supremacy to me, even though it's an American flag.
Right, right. And I think that it's kind of like when you think of when I think like when I travel, I go to tournaments and I go to places, you go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, you go to Tacoma, Washington, when you go to all these places, I will always tell people, give me a couple of minutes, I want to do something. They're like, what are you doing? I said, I want to walk to the inner city. They're like, ain't no inner city here. I said, no, in every city you go to, there is a inner city.
That's right. Absolutely.
I need to get familiar. So I need to go while all of y'all downtown having a good time celebrating. I want to know that what block is right like 2 blocks over that I don't want to wander into. That's just that awareness that you have. People like, man, you crazy. I say, no. See, I can't get too comfortable that I become unaware. I gotta always be aware of my surroundings. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's a paranoia that we will never break when we came up of people of our age, because when everybody else is having fun, I use this comparisons when I'm teaching kids. When I take kids to the playground and they playing, I gotta always go all the way back to the wall and make sure everybody plays safe.
That's right.
I can't get lost in playing because something will happen behind me and then everything will be messed up. I gotta always be the guy that can't have as much fun.
That's right.
What is that like for you, especially as an African American man, to know that you gotta always be that soldier?
That's right. Always.
Man,
but here's the thing: the only thing I will do to contradict what you just said, I would not say it's not paranoia.
Okay. All right.
It's not paranoia because it's real.
Yes, sir.
It's based on real. It's based on real circumstances. It's based on fact. Yes. So your paranoid people. Paranoid is like they have no reason. They're afraid and stuff because of something that doesn't exist or something that's in their mind. We're not reacting to that. We are reacting to what's real. And then they came to a point where, no, that's not real anymore. It's a level playing field, that doesn't exist. That's happened in the 60s. That happened in the 50s. And now we realize, it was right in front of our eyes that this is alive and well right now. Someone said to me something very, very interesting. Back in Jim Crow, there was the Green Book, where if Black people traveled, they know where they could go, for safety, where they could eat, where they could sleep. Someone said, now the new Green Book is the electoral map. It's blue and red. So you don't want to end up in these red areas because of how these people see you, and they see you as a threat and an enemy. So it's not paranoia. It's based on some real stuff. And they always make us, and this is the thing I always react to, they make us feel like we're paranoid. I think when, the Rodney King beating happened, in LA, and it's caught on tape, on video. And we all finally said, this is what we're talking about. Yeah. You all see it. Now you can see, what we're talking about. You see how they treat us. You see, and then, they can spin it where the cops get off. Yeah. So then again, it makes you feel like, it makes you feel like you're crazy. Yeah. Yeah. But we're not. And now, it's everybody, they're all coming out of, the closet. They've been emboldened. And once again, people see it, the knee on, George Floyd's neck. People saw cold-blooded murder. And people reacted to it. And we know the Black Lives Movement, when you see people out there, it is a multicultural coalition.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so some people get it. So it's not all, and it's always been that way. There are those who are conscious and get it, to an extent, and then there are those who still, that's still not enough.
And it's funny, I think, and it goes right back to your documentary. And I think the fortunate thing for me, when I did get in trouble, along with, being brought up into the spiritual realms of going to church all the time, doing martial arts, going to China, I happen to follow the teachings and the philosophies of what Mr. Malcolm X had to do to turn his life around. Mm-hmm. So when I got locked up, I said, man, I'm going to do, if I can't find, because I couldn't, it's crazy. It's like, when you did try to become conscious, everything for history started during slave days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh,
That's right.
so I guess that's all they taught us. And I'm talking about they do it different now, but when we came up with our generation, it started in slavery. It started,
That's right.
on the field or in the master's
That's
house,
right.
or whatever it may be. So that's what I'm going off of. And then the guy said, no, do you realize we were kings and queens? So I went deeper. And then I fell in love with what Malcolm X had did. And once I realized that who I was,
That's
I
right.
didn't have to be racially, I didn't have to repeat that racism towards other people.
That's
I
right.
now was strong enough to be able to accept and work with other people because I knew my history.
That's right.
Do you think right now, because our kids lack that factual references on the historical elements of who we are as a people, or any people as a whole, Africa, it seems like, and I hate to say it,
Yeah.
the only race that don't want to identify with our history.
I know. Yeah.
Am I making sense, or am I going?
You are making sense, and I have two thoughts on it. One is it's our responsibility.
Yes, sir. Okay.
It's ours. It's on us. I mean, when you look at the Jewish faith, my daughter just went to her friend who's half black and half white, but she's Jewish. Went to her bat mitzvah, and she studied their history and then presented it to everybody. She didn't get that from school. She got that from synagogue. I'm thinking about, okay, how can I do that same thing for my daughter when she turns 16? And no, that's not gonna be a big party, but what is she going to present about her culture, about her history, that she can present to everyone, like here are the shoulders that I stand on. And I have a real different spin, and I don't know where I got it from, but I was always proud to be a descendant of slaves. I said, these are the strongest on earth.
Yeah.
They endured that, and we're still at the same table.
Yeah.
Our trajectory is so light years away from their trajectory. That's easy. They have generational wealth. They have generational education. They have generational everything. Right. So from one generation to another, they're not making leaps and bounds. We make leaps and bounds. We went from enslavement to the vice president of the United States, to the president of the United States. That's light years. Right. So I was always very incredibly proud to be a descendant of slaves, because they survived the transatlantic slave voyage.
Yeah.
They survived that.
Right.
That's the strength. And people always laugh at me because and I think as Black men, and this is my own philosophy, I mean, why are we such a threat?
Yeah.
Why are we such a threat? It's because of who we are.
Yeah.
And that no one, I mean, they can't take any, they've tried to destroy us. And they realize they can't. They can't. We may have been enslaved, but they did not. I mean, look, we know that there are those of us who they did. They did enslave. They enslaved their minds, their bodies, and we were never able to recover from it.
Right.
But those of us who have, where we sit right now, we are the strongest people on earth. And that's my own bias. Yeah. But that's what fuels me. That's when I walk into a room, I know I come from the strongest people on earth. And I think that's what we really need to instill in our kids, is that, we are, any of this stuff, pandemic, blah, blah, we are survivors. Yeah. And we've survived the worst circumstances for hundreds of years, centuries. Yeah. We endured it, but we still came out whole.
And that's why your documentary, once again, it just like, because all the things in martial arts, you just don't have someone that make the references of my historical experiences.
Right.
Everybody says like, man, you just becoming real. I say, but no, that's my generational experience. That's how I know my martial arts work, because of what I had to go through during that era that your documentary talks about. So I'm not coming to you from the Chinese man perspective or the Korean man's perspective. Right. I'm coming to you from our perspective, that story that was never told. So what I think about as you were talking, the beautiful thing about this, and I realize this, especially with overcoming, and I'm not going to say overcoming, but arresting that addiction of drugs and in that era of crack. As long as I don't ever put a drug or a drink, or most importantly, the mentality of a hustler in my life again, right, I'm good. You can't stop what I'm going to do, because the joy and the happiness that I feel about life today, the only thing that can stop me is me going back to do something that got me in trouble before. As long as I keep moving and being positive, what can stop me? Even a setback is a comeback, because guess what? As long as you ain't doing nothing more, we learn through and that's the beautiful thing that you're saying about. We learn to flip the script.
Flip the script.
Yeah.
Brother, we flip the script every time.
Yeah, man.
Once they think they got us, we flip it.
Yeah, man.
And that's the beauty. That is the beauty. And I think hopefully from this documentary, is what they did. People came out of it. People came scarred and bruised. It was like war. I mean, people came out, really impacted and affected by it. Yes. But got through it. Yes. We learned, through it, and survived it. And I think the main thing is like, how do we deal with our trauma? We all come out of these things, you're standing tall, but there's stuff inside you that you have to work through. This trauma. And I think that's probably also part of the issue, in our communities, is that, there are a lot of kids who experience trauma at a very young age that goes untreated. That no one ever, it's like our kids, and I see it, my daughters in private school here in New York, they display the littlest problem. They schedule an appointment with the school psychologist, to deal with it. If they don't have, if they have a problem with a math problem, and this is a true fact, my daughter had, there was a test, she got, 90% of them right. So she got, correct, wrong, correct, wrong, correct. But wow, but why did she get that incorrect? And they called us into the school. I said, why are you bringing me into this school? Why are you doing that? And then, but what it says is that, okay, there may be a pattern here. Yeah. And then, they checked it out. No, it's not a problem. It's that she wasn't paying attention. Right. But that little thing they saw, and they said, okay, let's figure out, what is there a problem? Right. A lot of kids, I mean, they see stuff in their households, they see stuff in their community, but they never get a chance to sit down with someone to talk about it and to see how it impacts their lives and how to get the tools, to overcome it, so that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing, I think, once again, in closing here, is that what you did, it was a confirmation for me that what we are doing to impact our children with martial arts. The beautiful thing about in what we do, we created a program that we can take back and offer scholarships to our kids. And I call it profitable change, because I don't believe you can change poverty without trying to find a way to create profit.
Yep, absolutely, man, absolutely.
So our goal is, how do we go back and impact our children, especially through virtual, when so many kids, I mean, our community is at a loss, because they weren't even prepared to be able to convert over to what's happening with virtual learning and Zoom, and let alone what we're doing right now. But how do we go back to a virtual platform with a simple way to instill these principles? But when a kid get to a certain age of teenager, because, and this is funny, and I don't know if a lot of people understand it, in most states, a child at the age of 14 or 15 can become employable. They can get a job. So what we said, what about if we create coaches at the age of 14 that can become coaches and mentors to the children?
That's right. By
teaching martial arts. So here you go. You got a teenager who, once again, need money at that age, but we give them a chance to become an entrepreneur at that age. And who are those kids going to most likely look up to and want to learn from? That teenager.
That's right.
So what do we do with adults? We, as grown men and women, we mentor those kids and show them how to start a business or become an entrepreneur at a young age of 15 or 16. So when they go off to college, you still can get the extra job, but you can do your own thing.
That's right.
I mean, what do you think of I know it probably sounds crazy. What do you think?
No, it doesn't. No, I wrote it down. Before you talk about it, I wrote it down, entrepreneurial spirit. I think what we learned from that crack era, what crack did, a positive thing, just talking about a positive thing, it unleashed, the entrepreneurial spirit of these young people. They saw, and now we just have to harness that entrepreneurial spirit and guide it. But you don't want to stomp it. You want to nurture that entrepreneurial spirit because, entrepreneurship to me is really the only form of economic, freedom.
Right. That's right.
In the end, we can go work for corporations and all that. You can get your little pension at the end, but entrepreneurship is really I fundamentally believe is the engine to economic success and freedom.
But you said the pension, but we realize that now even people that work so hard to get pensions and get retirement, they now work at McDonald's.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a game. Until we learn how to play the game, we are going to be played by the game. Am I correct?
You're correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. We got to understand the game. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Good, man. Well, it was great talking to you.
So much. It was an awesome interview.
Thank you.
And I'll give.
Sorry, but I went off on a lot of tangents, brother. But it sparks this. I think the documentary, what you're saying, it just sparks so much, of our experience and not just our experience and what we're challenged with today.
Yes, sir. So off the record. I mean, so you do other stuff. You said you work for a documentary company.
Yeah, I work for the company. I also have my own company as well. That does developing some projects and all. So, again, I think, even working for the company, that's kind of what, keeps the lights on.
Yes.
But again, it's like, okay, what can I, and it's still at 60, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
What can I do? So I have a company on the side working on some other projects as well, and I'm also an artist, and so I paint and I actually, just picked up something from when I was a kid, high school.
Okay.
I painted, but, my parents were like, no, you ain't becoming no artist. You don't make no money. And so when I'm, 50, 60 years old, I'm picking it up again and sold a lot of paintings at the same time.
So would it be disrespectful or off the record if we continue to communicate and I submitted some stuff to you?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. What kind of stuff you talking about?
It's a documentary. It's kind of like similar to what you did, but it talks about that journey of how martial arts got me out the city of Baltimore to become what I am today. So it's a 5-part docudrama that entails my whole life. All of my kids are now around the world doing martial arts and working in Hollywood. But it's a told story about how martial arts allowed many of us to creatively fight through that despair and now to be able to do what we're doing. I used to be on a TV show with Bruce Lee's daughter, which was my hero. So think about that. I think I mentioned to you, I used to call Hong Kong and I used to do all these crazy things. Mm-hmm. And nobody believed it. And then one day I get a chance to star in a TV show with Bruce Lee's daughter playing myself called The Bam.
Wow. Nice, man. Nice.
So the documentary with a friend of mine was showing that journey for hope for kids.
Yeah.
Realize that regardless of how bad it is, like you said, it might be something that you love doing. It might be finger painting. It might be making roses. If you find a way to passionately hold on to that,
you can make money. You can make money doing anything.
Yes.
You can make absolutely. You could become independently wealthy doing absolutely anything if you harness your passion. That's it.
That's right.
That's what they don't tell us.
Yeah. What they say all you need, just like the drug dealer, all you need is one block. You don't need the whole world. All you need is one block.
That's right.
You open up one store and serve those customers with great customer service in that one block. You can eat for the rest of your life if you give great customer service.
That's right. Let me ask you: have you thought about, or have you written a book?
Yeah, I got a book that I wrote when I was incarcerated. It's called The Master.
It's about you. It's autobiography.
It's about my whole journey. The thing is, It's about the journey from white belt, from no belt to black belt, and every belt describes my life and the purpose behind each belt. It's incredible. Yeah, I wrote it. I started writing it. That was my way to get.
Is it distributed at all? Is it just?
No, it's not out yet.
Because here's my advice to you in terms of if you look, it's always if there is an underlying property, like a book, that someone can take that and adapt it to a docudrama or a series that would be helpful, especially if you're thinking of a nonfiction.
Right. Okay.
It sounds like you're on the next thing.
Right. So can I reach out to you during the week? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, man. We appreciate it. Okay.